you in the chat, what timelines are we looking at regarding meetings once a quarter or once a month? That is something that that is a question for this group. So historically, SORA, before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, we had been delivering quarterly events and monthly kind of informal meetups. So that's kind of a question for you. Is that something, are you interested in having monthly meetups, even though they are virtual, or would you prefer to wait for those to be in person? Do you like the monthly cadence on that? And if we're looking at something like the data literacy program that is proposed to be on a quarterly basis and having one pillar focused on each quarter. So for example, in first quarter, focusing on that data value pillar, second quarter, maybe focusing on that data access pillar analysis, and then presentation in the final quarter next year.
I don't know if I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I think that like most of us probably on this meeting, we spend a lot of time in front of a computer screen talking to other people in little boxes. Mm-hmm. So the idea of a monthly meeting might be a little unattended by a lot of folks, because I don't know, me personally, I do appreciate it and personally like everybody else, but I think once a quarter might be enough for me. I mean, obviously if the group would like a little bit more, that's certainly specific, but obviously if there's a topic of conversation or there's a speaker that's going to provide some information specifically to an area I'm interested, of course I'm going to attend. But just check-ins once a month, maybe once a quarter, I think might be more attended, but that's just, again, my opinion, that's just what I think.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading Shannon's message here, and it sounds like, and we've also struggled, I think, to involve people that are outside the Salem area. And so thinking of ways that we can get them involved, maybe virtual is a good thing for that. So keeping some virtual platform, at least for 2021, or even when we get back to a situation where, in-person meetings are a thing and we can do that. Maybe keeping some virtual or reserving some of our efforts for some virtual events would be good. I'm thinking, as far as the getting together, we have done those social happy hours at a pub in Salem, and I think that was also that was nice, and they were fairly well attended, I would consider, just given the frequency. I think if it was quarterly or something like that, you may get a little bit more. I think it'd be the same with the normal events, as you're saying. I think if I were to have to go to a monthly SORA meeting where we were going to talk about statistics or things like that, I might also skip out on some of them. Whereas if it's something that I know is every quarter or every 6 months or something like that, I can make that time commitment, and I'm much more likely to set aside some meetings or something like that to make sure that I can attend. So I think I'm with you on that. And actually, that's another, another thing. I am curious, as we start moving into an environment where things are going to be more remote. Shannon just sent me a message and was saying that, her position is likely going to stay remote even after COVID settles down. My agency at the Oregon Lottery, we're working on a new policy, which we expect is also going to be very friendly to telecommuting. And so I think one of the things, Hannah, that we're gonna have to look into are ways that we can keep people engaged when not, 85% of the people that we're talking to are in the Salem area.
This is Alan. That's, I think, precisely why these sorts of conversations are so useful. We're absolutely in uncharted territory right now. We want to make sure that all the goals that we had before 2020 are still in place for SORA in general. And so finding really creative ways to make sure people are engaged is going to be important. Finding ways that they will consistently be engaged, but also not overloading people. You know, someone, as I believe Phil mentioned earlier, we spend a lot of time in front of computer screens, and it might not be the most fun thing to do that again for kind of on a monthly basis. But this is a great forum to help share some of your opinions, and I think we got some good stuff so far. So that's great.
I'm wondering what your guys' experiences have been in conferences that have been virtual. So if we were to hold an event that was completely virtual, if you've had a good experience doing that, or if it's been hard to stay engaged. I can tell you from my personal experience, I feel like it's hard to stay engaged. But I'm curious, it may just be me and my lack of attention span.
I'll jump in here. You know, I work at ODOT, and so you know we've done rather large conferences in the past, and recently we did one this fall, virtual, and there was somewhere in the neighborhood of I think 300 or 400 folks that attended that. I think maybe more, and you know, and I was part of the team that helped put that together and pick up the pieces when it was over. Actually, went pretty well, very well actually, but. We found that a lot of the feedback was if you exceed about a half an hour, unless there's a lot of back and forth, particularly in a larger group, you're going to start losing people. So, any of those topics that are going to be discussed probably ought to be rather brief, and then as much as we can. And a lot of that is on the presenter, right? Typical, webinar 101 stuff. If you or virtual meeting 101 stuff. If you're giving a presentation, you absolutely need to be active about asking people to give feedback. Otherwise, it just you lose people.
Yeah, I'll second what Phil said, that you really need to keep it short, maybe half hour to an hour. You can go longer if you include engaging things like using breakout sessions in Zoom for smaller group discussions and things like that. But if it's just a talking head for a long time, it's really hard to pay attention, and it's a lot easier to allow yourself to get distracted when nobody's actually watching you and your distractions.
Right, and I see a comment in the chat that it's always nice when some fun is included in the meeting, right? I totally agree with that. So what I
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
Was that Daniel?
Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, so I was just going to say, to kind of summarize, the main points that I've heard so far is that people like the idea of quarterly events, of short events, 30 minutes to an hour or so. People like the idea of having live video events, virtual environment going forward, and people like the idea of the data literacy program. Is there a part of the data literacy program that that's most important to you? So that's data value, understanding the importance of data and its place in projects, accessing the data, knowing how to extract data if needed, analysis and presentation. Is there any parts of that you would prioritize that you would like to see first?
I'm going to write it in the chat just in case people aren't super familiar with the pillars. So it's data value, data access.
Right. Or is there something else in data that you think about when you think about data literacy that you would like us to deliver next year?
I think, what I've heard, so maybe I'm a sounding board for some others here. Where a lot of our members are sort of struggling a little bit, I think, is in how we present data and how we get buy-in from the people in which we're supporting with the data or analysis that we have. Data has a story to tell, and I think being effective at that storytelling is what I've heard people want the most. I do know from my personal thing, I will also put a plug. I would like to do a little bit more on the data analysis piece too. There was a session I remember early on in the SORA days in which we were kind of helping someone that was presented with some of their analysis. And I think that would be super helpful for me who struggles now doing some of the analysis and statistics that I could have done probably 10 years ago.
Excellent, right? So I see PK mentioned data storytelling could definitely deliver some training and some resources on that. That's something that I have a personal passion around. Just right off the bat, I can say I really I enjoy following the blog Storytelling with Data. There's also a free community that I like to participate in that allows gives some exercises around storytelling with data to learn, as well as some challenges. I also see some interest in the sort of data value category, how to make it seem valuable to the public. What else?
This is Max. There's, I think like there were some conversations, at least maybe a couple years ago in some of the sessions about some of the challenges of data sharing between state agencies. And if that's still an issue that's of interest to a lot of people, that might be something interesting. Another kind of area that I think that there's some interest in is perhaps ways in which we can methods by which we can do forecasting for our whatever sort of work our agency does, and future casting. That might be something of interest as well. And always, like to looking at, along with like data presentation, thinking of like the very first steps of how is the analysis going to be set up? What are the data that are meaningful? And I guess like maybe more of a philosophical discussion of that too, and then what then would be the method by which we could answer the question that we're framing. So those are just a few thoughts.
I think one of the things that I hear the most is that everything's changing, and I think that our new reality will be a lot different, and these are going to be the conversations that steer the future. So I appreciate everybody contributing today. It really is nice to see and hear.
So one of the things I totally appreciate, and I agree, understanding or getting some movement around sharing information across state agencies, or even, I'm thinking for people probably in like DHS or the school systems where there's some regulations behind that, figuring out ways in which you can share information even within an agency has always been a struggle for me. So understanding sort of where we stand there and maybe advocating for that, I think would be helpful. I know the group has had opportunities to speak with Catherine Helms, the state chief data officer, on these topics. And I'm wondering if, and I know that they're publishing the state data strategy. I don't know if that is included there, but I wonder if maybe we have some advocate role, or at least help organizations understand what the rules are for sharing information effectively with the proper governance in place.
Very good. And I see a great comment from M in the chat saying, how can we play a role in helping people with strong data analysis figure out a path towards greater roles in policy work? And I think that could be part of the data value pillar, is valuing what data can bring to policy and to project and program management.
You know, let me jump in here. One thing that might be useful, especially related to bridging across agencies, is, and maybe this has happened in the past, but I was not aware of it, that, you know, everyone that's in this room right now, they probably have some idea of what data and what sorts of things that their particular organization reports, tracks, and uses it for. And I think that if there was an opportunity at some point, maybe during the next year or so, for folks to volunteer or something like that, or maybe have someone within their organization come and talk to the group and say, hey, look, you know, I work at ODOT, you know, everyone's like, okay, bridges, roads, whatever. Well, you know, we're a data rich agency, and I would be happy, and I have reached across out with DHS and with, you know, the forestry and other agencies about a lot of the things that we have in common. And, you know, to build those relationships, of course, this is part of that, is building those relationships to understand who's out there and what they have and how you can work together. So maybe that might be an opportunity to have actual people come in who are part of the organization and say, hey, here's my 15 minutes. This is what we do. This is what we have. This is the roles we play. And oh, by the way, don't do this, or hey, make sure you do this. And, you know, it could be kind of lively and fun or whatever. I'm not saying people to dress up in costumes or anything, but I will say that, you know, no one wants to look at, you know, 40 PowerPoint presentations from 20 different people. Nobody wants that. But maybe just a quick 5 or 10 minute hit on what it is they do and the organization does, what types of data are collected. Maybe something that, I mean, you could spend a long time doing this, but just a quick hit, then maybe, you know, 5-10 minutes at the end for people to ask questions or to make those connections.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I know that's something that's come up on past surveys before, and SORA had actually started planning one of those types of events back in January and February, but then we kind of had to abort in March as we moved into a virtual environment, and we were trying to figure out how to deliver these events virtually. But we're on Zoom now, so this is something that we can consider for next year. Thank you. And we just have about 2 minutes left in this session. I do want to mention that at our last session, I talked about the executive committee recruitment. So we are now opening the recruitment for SORA's 2021 executive committee. You've all shared some great ideas with us today. And if you would like to be part of shaping SORA in 2021 in a specific officer position, so we have positions ranging from secretary, web coordinator, volunteer coordinator, communications coordinator, if you'd like to be a part of SORA in a leadership role in a specific position, or just general leadership SORA, please shoot us an email. I'll leave my email in the chat, and you can reach out to me to learn more about the positions that are available and the commitment. I can briefly say that the minimum commitment is to participating in our monthly meetings. That is 1 hour in length, again, virtual. Anticipate to be virtual through the first half of 2021. And also to help plan at least one event throughout the year. That's the commitment to being on the executive committee. If you have, I know we just scheduled this event to 4:30. If you have some additional feedback, you're welcome to pop that into the chat, and I'm happy to stay around if you'd prefer to deliver that verbally. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. Got some great feedback. We will certainly use your feedback and look forward to seeing you next year.